How you going, people? Here we go, part 3.
I take the keys for safekeeping and leave it here, and but I stop him, and I don't. And this is more maybe attributed to his lack of experience. I don't think he realized the gravity of the situation.
Oh, I don't think he realized the gravity. So he's saying the other guy was inexperienced was good. It helps the other guy. The other guy is going to be harder to get eviction because he's saying he was inexperienced. And he's also saying he didn't recognize the gravity, which means he did recognize the gravity. He thought it was a criminal. He thought the guy was going to die.
Potential situation. So I tell him, no, we're not. We're not gonna leave the scene. You need to call the sergeant, notify them of what's happening. We need to hold the scene, especially the vehicle, because it could potentially be evidence of this.
Okay, so that was a good move. This might have been where I stopped watching because I didn't know he said that. Good move on his part. No, we're going to secure the scene. This is still a crime scene, and the car is part of that crime scene, and Floyd was in the car, and we got him out of the car, and now he's dead. So there could be evidence in that car of other things. So, and when you find a gun or something else in the car, now you know why Floyd was fighting you to get out of the car. He was either trying to get the gun or he was going to run because he didn't want you finding the gun and the drugs. All kind of reasons not to let that car go. I mean, that's just stupid to not impound that car.
This whole incident. So he ends up, I don't remember, I think Officer Chavin might have been the one that called. I don't recall off. We've been one of those two. Sergeant Pluger, and he arrives on scene. And I believe Officer King fills him in on what occurred.
Now I want you to watch the demeanor of this guy through this whole thing. His feet hasn't moved and his hand hasn't changed. And he's not really getting excited. He's not trying to make points. He's very monotone, as a matter of fact. And he's got a lot of pause and ums, and he's trying to recall, and he's going, oh, let me backtrack and things. That might go in his favor because he doesn't seem like he's got all the facts either memorized or lined up. But it's going to hurt him because they're going to be able to say, well, didn't you say in this interview this, and now on the stand you're saying this? And why did you change? Are you lying now or were you lying then? That's why talking to the cops will only end up hurting you.
What happens from there?
And there's the question again. He was going to stop and end it there. And we want him to keep talking. We want you to give us more things that we can lock you up on. And, officer, what happened next?
Sergeant Pluger said that he needed to go check on the status of Floyd. And me and Officer Shavner to go with him up there. And at this time, Lane gets the ride back with the fire department and dropped off.
Now, if I was this guy's attorney, this guy's just kind of letting him talk. The things that I'm interrupting and saying this would have sounded better and that would have sounded better, that's kind of what this attorney, I think, should be helping this officer right now. Because you don't have a judge, you don't have rules of evidence, you don't have hearsay. You're in here with your attorney voluntarily, which means you can leave, which means the cops really can't tell you, hey, you can't talk to your client. So every time this guy says something that's not real clear, the attorney could go, wait a minute, Officer Talbot, you just made the statement that blah, blah, blah. Isn't it true that when you did this, you were more concerned? And he could kind of lead him into a better statement that sounds better and protects his client better. But he's not doing that. He's letting his client do this. Now, maybe he's doing it. He's got some gray hair. He's been around for a while. Maybe he's like, you know what? I don't want to be seen in this thing. And I would rather argue it later and do all that later on a stand instead of do it in an interview like I'm coaching him. So maybe that's not why he's doing it. But he could be doing that. And these guys can't object.
So they're instructed to stay with the vehicle at the scene and hold the scene for as potential crime scene until we know the status of Floyd. Me and Officer Shopping end up heading up to HCMC to meet with.
Okay, so he's saying, like, until we know the status of Floyd. It sounds like if Floyd lives, it's no big deal. We can blow everything off. It's only a problem if Floyd dies. That's what it sounds like he's kind of implying here.
Sergeant Kluger at HCMC, check on the status of Floyd.
What did you learn?
Through the entirety of our HCMC, we just stood out of the.
Notice the questions are very, I want you to keep talking. I want you to give me more information. This guy isn't interrupting. He's not leading him. He's not doing anything. He's just kind of prodding him when he stalls to keep talking.
We were out in the hallway. About maybe probably there for 5-10 minutes. And I believe a doctor comes out and informs us that Floyd was pronounced dead. I left out of it.
Should have stopped. See, that's why when an attorney or a cop or somebody, if you're answering questions voluntarily, answer their question and stop. When you get those pauses, these guys are like, okay, let's see if we can get them to keep talking. We'll just pause. And that's just an interview technique. If you're telling me a story and I look at you, the last thing I want to do is interrupt you. I'm going to look at you like I'm listening intently and I'm loving it because I know it's getting recorded and I get to go over it and I'm going to use it against you. And I want to keep you talking. That's my job, is to keep you talking. When you decide to stop talking and when you think you've said everything that you can say, then I'm going to ask you questions and lock you down.
Out of the ambulance bay, and we stood by the ambulance bay. I guess Sergeant Bluger was probably talking to the watch commanders or informing them.
Okay. And what did you and Officer Chauvin do?
We started out just waiting for our next instruction.
He's asking the same question. What did you do next? And then what happened? He's just kind of rewording it and making it doesn't sound like he's just keeping him talking. He's acting like, oh, I need to know this. And well, what did you do next? I just want you to keep talking. That's all he's saying. I mean, he could literally say, just keep talking. Keep telling me something.
Did you receive some instruction?
Yes, to wait for our escort officers.
Okay. And what does that mean?
When officers.
This guy knows what an escort officer is. He works with his agency. He knows that anytime there's a critical incident, if you're in a shooting or something, you get an escort officer. He knows what that is.
In Minneapolis, getting to a critical incident, there's kind of a mechanism where the department has a escort officer, where everyone's separated, has a escort officer come and wait with us and transport us to City Hall.
Who was your escort officer?
I believe it was Sergeant Mohammed.
Sergeant Mohammed?
Yeah.
Where did he take you?
City Hall.
Anywhere specific in City Hall?
I believe it was I want to say room 100.
Okay. And then you remained there for some amount of time?
Yes.
Okay. Is it okay if we just clarify some things?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so the cop did a good job here. Because they're here voluntarily and he wants to keep them here, last thing you want to do is piss these guys off, and the attorney goes, you know what, this interview's over, we're leaving. We're here voluntarily. If you want to act like dicks, we're leaving. So this guy does a good job. It tells me he's got experience. He's been around for a while. He asks the attorney, hey, do you mind if we clarify some things? The attorney says, yes. Now you give the attorney the feeling that he's still in control, that you're respecting him, that you're not trying to hurt his client. You just want to clarify some things. We're all friends here. We're all trying to just get to the truth. So this investigator did a good job here by asking that.
Okay.
And now what he's going to do, he's going to lock him down. I'm going to get every inconsistency. I'm going to make you clarify everything you said that I think I can use either against you or against the other officers. Here's where it comes.
So, Cup Foods at 38th in Chicago. You mentioned having some experience at Cup Foods. Can you elaborate on that? What kind of calls over your time in the 3rd Precinct have you had at Cup?
Now he's trying to see, because that statement he made about a known gang area and he hurt him and they're hostile to police, they're going to make him say, why do you think that? Maybe you're just racist against that store. Maybe it's you and it's not the crowd. Explain to me why you have those feelings against that store in that area. So this is where he wants him to explain this, and he's going to try and lock him down that his feelings are either unjustified, or later, if he tries to make it more than what he says now, they're going to say, well, you didn't mention that in the first interview. Why are you adding things now? Is it because you talked to your attorney? Is it because you did some research? Is it because, and his answer should be, no, I was going to this interview, and at the time, I just really didn't think about it. And then later, after going over my interview, I thought and said, man, I should have said that, and I remembered this, and I remember that. That's why I'm adding things.
Foods.
A lot of shots fired, fights. I think I might have picked up maybe a couple of people there on warrants.
On warrants, you said?
Correct.
Okay. The call that 320 was on, that was you said a forgery call?
Correct.
Was there any mention of violence?
Okay. So now he's trying to negate the fact that this was a violent call, because the guy gave a pretty good answer about shots fired, warrants, etc. I mean, I would have said it's a high crime area. We're always there for either trespassing, drug use, complaints, fights, gang members, rival gangs, drive-by shootings. It's a violent area with a lot of violent crime. I'm sure if you pull the reports and calls for service at that place, you'll have numerous. And not only do I not maybe go to all of them, I hear that place on the radio mentioned. It's a place known to most officers in briefing as a shithole and a high crime violent area. That place has a reputation. It's well earned for calls for service. That would have been a much stronger statement on why he believed it was violent, but that's okay. Now he's going to try and say, oh, but this call, there was no mention of violence, was there? So you really had no reason to think what you believed, because this was just a simple forgery call.
Or weapons in that call that you recall?
Correct.
Was there any mention of violence or weapons in that call that you recall?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I don't recall is better than no. I don't recall is much better than no, because now when he gets called to the stand later, he can recall. Now, the prosecution go, well, we interviewed the first time, you said you didn't recall. Now you recall? Well, no. When I went over my interview and I saw that I didn't recall, I kind of researched and now I do remember. And this is what I remember.
Do you recall like the essence of what the complaint was?
I believe it was somebody
So what the prosecution, this guy's prosecution, they're all on a team, what they're trying to do is get him to say that I had no reason to believe this was a high priority dangerous call. I don't care what the call was. The call may have been about somebody dropped a pink cupcake. But when the officer calls in for cover, and when I show up and there's a crowd and they're fighting and they're resisting and the officers are out of breath on the radio and they're calling for cover and we call for ambulances and we're fighting with the crowd, all that changes. It doesn't matter whether the call didn't mention weapons or violence. I'm going by what I heard and what I saw when I responded. I don't really care what the call was. That's what his attorney should be trying to get him to say.
Passed I think remarks something tried past Vic Bill.
Okay.
The person was appeared possibly intoxicated.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we've got a simple passing a forged document and an intoxicated person. Hardly a call that would be violent and seem like we needed all these officers. Wouldn't you agree, officer? Here comes the games.
Have you had experience with counterfeit money being passed at businesses?
Yes.
Okay. How would you typically handle this if that was...
Okay, so now we're going to get, would you handle it by tackling and aggressive? See, this guy is focusing, the prosecution is making the focus on the low priority of the call and the non-violent, and there wasn't anything there. He's not mentioning, when he asked, how would you handle the call with money? Well, it depends. It depends on whether I get a little old lady that got a fake 20 from the bank and she didn't know it was fake, or whether I get a 6'2" black guy under the influence that's trying to drive away from the scene, that's fighting and resisting the cops, who's been to prison before and has a large criminal history. It would depend how I handle it. That would stop this bullshit. Let me make you focus on the simple, it's just a simple counterfeiting. No, it's not. Totality of circumstances is totally different. And in a high crime area with a hostile crowd with multiple suspects and a guy that's fighting the cops and the cops are calling for cover and they can't handle the dude that's 6 foot and he's fighting. It's a lot different than a little old lady who got a fake 20 at the bank. So don't try and lock me into this, oh, this is a simple counterfeit call. No, it's not simple.
That was all you knew. How would you handle that?
What do you mean?
Let's say the call is exactly what you said. Somebody passed a fake $20 bill in their store and appeared intoxicated. How would you handle that? Or how would you typically handle a call like that?
If we have a suspect, I guess they would be detained. And obviously we get more of the backstory. While being detained, we probably get more of the backstory from the store. And then verify if it was actually a fake bill or not.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay. It's a fairly common call?
I would say it's a rarity to have a suspect with forgery to actually be still there.
Okay, so what he means by rarity to have a suspect still there, he's not saying forgery is rare. He didn't really answer that correctly. Is it a common call? Well, there's a lot of forgery and counterfeit calls, but it's very rare that the suspect is still there when we get the call. We usually find out later that it was counterfeit or later that it was a forgery, and then they call us for us to take a report. It is rare for us to get there when the suspect is actually there.
Don't stick around now.
Generally not.
Okay. But was the information that you recalled that there was a suspect on scene, or was the call just that the person who passed the bill seemed to be intoxicated?
I believe in the remarks they had mentioned the vehicle.
Okay.
That was parked across the street. So.
Good answer. I believe I did that. He didn't lock it down. See, if he'd have said, no, I know there was a suspect in this and intoxication, he locks himself down. Earlier, he said he just reviewed the call. If the call logs doesn't say intoxicated and the suspect is there, he's going to have to explain why he knew he was there. So he said, I believe I knew. You want to use a lot of things like that when you're talking to government about, I think, I believe, from the best of my recollection. That way you're not locked down in case you're wrong and they try to get you to say you lied.
So that would be unusual in your experience to have a suspect in a forgery or a counterfeit bill still be on scene.
Correct.
Okay. When you guys get there, when I say you guys, I mean you and Officer Chauvin get there. You first see Officer Chang, who then points to Officers Lane and King. You describe seeing Mr. Floyd resisting. Can you just elaborate on that and describe more specifically what you saw him do?
Okay, this is where he wants to lock him down with why he came to his conclusions. This is critical that this guy, and you know, he needs to be able, I don't know what he's going to say, but he needs to be able to paint that picture of how Floyd was actively resisting and being uncooperative and loud and coming up with multiple excuses for his non-compliance. He needs to get that terminology out to paint Floyd as the violent, aggressive offender trying to resist and fight the officer and delay the officers and refusing to get in the car. He needs to paint that picture here. I don't know if he does or he doesn't. Let's see.
He was in handcuffs, kind of stiffen up his body.
Okay.
Where in order for somebody to kind of sit in the squad car, especially a big person like him, you need their cooperation as far as bending their knees.
Okay.
And because it could be tight back there, especially for a big person.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have some level of cooperation from the suspect, it's going to be extremely tough.
See, a defense attorney or a prosecutor would immediately jump in there and go, so are you telling me he was uncooperative because you don't think he bent his knees far enough? Is that what you just said? Because, I mean, that would be a question that would, again, all you got to do is throw smoke in front of a jury and confuse one or two of them, and then they kind of discount the whole thing.
Especially if he won't bend his knee.
Okay.
And he's a bigger guy. And I think they asked every time to sit down, sit in the squad car, and he's not following.
See, he's saying he's a big guy, but he's not saying how that affects it. Not only is he not bending his knees, but because he's so big, he's overpowering the officers. The officers can't get him to bend his knees. They can't control him. They can't even get him in a car. It takes two officers. One of them ends up going to the other side, and then he ends up pushing his way out. So when I say he's resisting, He was actively resisting and throwing around officers. He was making 2 and 3 officers unable to control him or maintain control of him because of his active resistance, his strength, his lack of pain, and his excited state under the influence of whatever drugs he was under the influence, because it didn't appear that nothing was phasing him no matter what the officers did. Paint the picture.
He's refusing to sit.
Okay. I mean, you mentioned he was saying he's claustrophobic. What else was he saying?
I think from the video, I'm not sure, I thought he was saying, I can't breathe. Before he ever got in the car, I can't breathe. And that's probably what he wants him to hear him say or repeat, because he's going to say, if a guy's claustrophobic, I can see you maybe ignoring that, but if he's claustrophobic and can't breathe, why wouldn't you stop and reassess? Why wouldn't you not put him on the ground? Why wouldn't you find a problem with 3 officers holding a guy down that said, I can't breathe and I'm claustrophobic? Well, my answer would be a lot of suspects say they can't breathe. A lot of people that fight with us say they can't breathe. They say it the whole time they're fighting with us. Floyd was saying it the whole time he wouldn't get in the car, and the whole time he was throwing the officers around, the whole time he was jumping out of the car and pushing himself through the car. He was saying, I can't breathe. When we see suspects saying that, we tend to discount it because their actions does not support what they're saying.
That he didn't want. I think he was saying he wanted to talk or something like that.
Okay.
But he was instructed to sit in the squad car.
Do you know what the urgency was to get him in the squad car?
Here we go. Who said there was an urgency? I didn't say there was urgency. Normally, when we put people in handcuffs and we arrest them, we put them in a car. Why? It's safer for them. It's safer for us. We can protect them. We can control the environment. We can turn on the air conditioner. We don't have to keep them out in public and embarrass them. It's standard procedure that when we get somebody and we're going to transport them, we put them in a car. What do you mean the urgency? I never said there was an urgency. I just said the guy was resisting and fighting in a crowd. We were in a hostile area. And to me, it seems reasonable. The quicker we get him in a car, the quicker we can clear the scene and protect him and protect the officers. That's why we wanted to get him in a car. There wasn't no malice or some big plan on conspiring to get him in the car because he was claustrophobic and we just wanted to do it because he was black. Give me a break.
No.
Do you know if he was formally under arrest?
No, we're acting good faith. So
as far as you knew, they wanted to get him in the squad?
Yep, backing officers.
Okay.
This was a good little side thing in here. Officer, isn't it true you didn't even know if Floyd was under the arrest? How can he be resisting if he wasn't under arrest? I don't care if he was under arrest or detained. He was in handcuffs. The officers were trying to get him in the car. It's not I didn't have time, like I said earlier, hostile crowd, rapidly evolving thing. We don't have time to figure out whether probable cause is good and ask a lot of questions. The officers wanted him in a car. He needed to get in the car. Period.
Have you had experience with people going under the influence?
Yes.
Okay. Because you described that you felt that he maybe was under the influence.
Sure.
All right. Is it, in your experience, has it been common, or is it common that people who are under the influence are sometimes hard to rationalize with?
Yes.
Did you see any, or at the time there, have any thoughts about maybe an alternative way to handle this?
Here's where he's trying to pin him down. Why didn't you stop? Why didn't you think? Why, when it didn't work, why? You know what? First of all, I wasn't a primary. Second of all, the guy was under arrest and we need to get him out of here. If he'd have gotten a car, it wouldn't have been a problem. His fighting and resistive actions and failing comply created this whole situation, and there was no reasoning. We already said the guy was unreasonable because of the influence. Why do you want to try other things and reason with a guy that's unreasonable? He was unreasonable. Wasting time talking and trying other things wasn't going to work. Our best move at that time was to get him in a car and get out of this area that was hostile and gang environment. We had minimum officers, and before this escalated into something else.
Being a little more veteran officer.
First, it wasn't our call. We're just a backup officer, so we don't. I don't have back information as far as.
Okay, so here's where he plays. I wasn't the primary. I can't make a decision. Earlier, he made a decision to pull the guy out, and he made a decision to hobble. Now, he's saying, I wasn't the primary. That's going to bite him in the butt when he gets on a stand, guaranteed.
What happened prior to us arriving.
But you're seeing what you're seeing right there in front of you.
Yep.
And obviously what the rookie officers are doing isn't working. Did you make any suggestions about maybe an alternative to try to get him in the car?
Later on.
Later on, but what about prior to getting him in the car?
No.
Okay. Did you actually physically assist trying to put him in the car?
No, I never.
You weren't able to get
I don't
hold of
recall
him?
ever touching him.
Okay, all right. But you went.
I don't recall ever touching him. Because, see, he might have bumped him or he might have touched him briefly and doesn't remember it. So I don't recall ever touching him. Good answer.
Around to the passenger side where Officer Lane was. Do I have that correct?
At some point, yes.
At some point. But then he had already kind of, I think you said, flinged himself out of the car?
Yep.
What did he do to fling? How did he do that?
So it's kind of like he scooped himself and then kind of with his foot pushed himself out against the side of the squad.
Okay, pushed himself out and then kind of...
From my view, that's what I saw.
Okay, and then came out of the car. And then you made the suggestion to put him on the car.
And so they try again to do the same thing again.
What do you mean?
Try to get him to sit in the squad car from that side. And at that time, I'm like, all right, guys, it's pointless to do this. Let's put him on the ground.
Now, this interview is what we call very non-confrontational. This cop right here has got his feet crossed. He's being nice. He's not trying to trap the guy. He is trying to trap him. And he is trying to lock him down. Even though he's being nice, that's his goal. Who thinks this officer is here to help this guy that they want to charge with murder? You really think that? He may want to help him if he figures out I can use you. If you can help me more by testifying against them, then I may want to use that. But I want to get charges on you. I want to lock you down so I can threaten you with a plea deal, so I can have leverage over you in order to use you against the other guys and use you the way that I want to use you. Talking to the government rarely ever helps you.
Was there ever any discussion or suggestion that maybe we just talk to him and see what the problem is?
Oh, wasn't that a nice, kind question? Rick, that officer's so nice. See, he's thinking clearly. He's like, wasn't there a time when you could have just talked to him and see what the problem was? He's implying that the officers did not take the time, that they weren't thinking of solving the problem, and that they were just concentrating on being mean to the poor guy that was just counterfeiting money, that was in prison before, that was trying to drive away drunk under the influence. They were just being mean to him. Nobody thought kindly just to ask him. We've already determined he's unreasonable. Why would I want to ask him and waste time and get him pissed off and have him react and prolong this? The quicker we get him in a car, the quicker we get him in control, the less chance he gets hurt and the less chance officers get hurt.
I would assume they probably...
What about from you, though?
Okay.
I mean, did you make that suggestion or try to do that?
I was not...
See, the reason why he wants you to say that is because he wants to say, why didn't you? Why didn't you do that? You're the senior officer. You said you were senior. You told him not to tow the car. You were obviously thinking, why didn't you think of that? Isn't it true that you were okay with what they were doing to Floyd? Isn't it true that you didn't have a problem with what they were doing? Isn't it true that you would have done the same thing if you were primary? That's where this is leading.
Not a contact officer, so I did not attempt to do that.
Understood. Okay.
Okay, so now he played I can't make a decision because I'm not the contact. That's going to hurt him because he didn't play it earlier.
So you went through you said the 40-hour CIT.
I would have been okay with him saying, you know what? I was trying to minimize my involvement in this because I wasn't the contact officer. And although there was a couple times where I interjected myself because I thought it was appropriate, I didn't want to interject myself at that time because it was still, I didn't have enough information what happened before. I didn't know why he was under arrest, whether he was detained. I didn't know who was friendly and who was hostile. I didn't know if he had family members there. I don't know if this was gang related and there was other gang members there, either rival or for him. There was a lot of unknown. All I was doing is trying to protect the officers, protect the scene, and try to get this guy out of here or get him under control so nobody got hurt. I would have been okay with that answer.
The crisis intervention training.
Yes.
From your experience.
Okay. For all you idiots out there always hollering, officers need more training. This guy had 40 hours of crisis intervention training. You know what training is? It's wasted money. It gets officers off the road. It gets them extra money. It gets the department extra money. And it gives the government the ability to say, you know what? We trained you on this. When we want to, we can use that against you. Like now, they want to. Every officer on that department had crisis intervention training. But you know what? We only have you that didn't use it. And now a guy's dead. And it's your fault because you didn't use it. Oh, shit, I'm at 30 minutes again. All right, moving on to part 4.